This parsha and Parshas Ki-Tetze, obviously, these parshiyot have a lot to say about Sefer Tshuva, Yemei Narayim, what we're trying to accomplish, where we're going. There's a little audio share that I gave yesterday that Reuben was kind enough to send the notice out. Anyone wants to download it? The idea basically, it's been posted. I saw it's been posted. Yeah, and it focuses on two midrashim, but we can expand a little bit more on it. And just as an open to this week's parsha too, because as Chazal point out that it's good thing this is covered, right? The Chazal point, you don't have to wash it, just the Chazal point out that the real war taking place at the beginning of the... I mean, this is a mugzam thing. It's a very bizarre thing. That even after many years, some things in the Torah are unusual at first, and you get used to them after a while. Some things you never get used to. The Yaakov Torah is basically one of those things that you never get used to. You never used to. You never really... Actually, good point. But you're not really ever used to because it's such an unusual thing. We'll just pause that all the phone turned on. This is supposed to happen before this year. Let's all do it at the same time to see what it plays. Like that. Anyhow, speaking of Yitzharas, there's a little short video I just saw. How did I see it? Where did I see it? I went to look for something else. Someone sent me an article. There was a link. With the video, you know what the video was? It was actually very well done, and I don't even know how to gain access to it again. But it was a video of different people, right, on their cell phones with other people, and what happens basically is, like, for example, the father's there, the father is there with his daughter on the swing, but you only see him pushing the swing and going back and forth.
Disconnect to connect.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Some
Italia. It's a whole thing in America. They're trying to get everyone to turn their cell phones off.
Right.
So that they can communicate with their family.
Other people. It's like they go through like different scenarios. Business scene where no one's, everyone's there, but you can't see them. Right. What it looks like to the world when you're totally involved in your thing. And the last part of the video basically is people shutting it off, and the daughter returns back to the swing, and the people return back to the conference table, and so on and so forth. So. It was nice that it's all our cell phones for us. Just reminded me of the video I just saw. Anyhow, but the point is that the Ephes Torah is a very, very unusual thing. As the Gemara says, the Torah speaking negative Tzaharis because it understands this person goes to war. People lose themselves in wars. They forget who they are. The Tzahara comes out. I mean, people do incredible things. The stories are horrific. People who have been there who tell you about what happens because killing, even if it's not murdering, it's like, in the war, it's necessary. But the idea of taking a single life, it changes a person. I mean, I was told that for the most part, I think most soldiers who kill the first person they kill have to go for therapy after it. It's debriefed. It's not a simple thing. Even the enemy, even though the enemy is coming, it's about to shoot that guy, he shoots him instead. But still, the idea of taking your life is such a traumatic reality for the average person that it changes a person's humanity, changes a person's sense of being human. And when that starts to go, then the heart takes over. And the Gemara points out and understands that when a person is in the heat of a moment, it's a heart is overcoming them. A person's like eating, he's totally enthralled by the moment. You can't simply say, don't do that. It's not going to happen. So the Torah employs a different psychology to try to get wean the guy out of this thing, basically. And he brings her home, and he makes her, she has to, cut off shape of her hair. Her fingernails grow. She cries for her parents, assuming she's going to miss them, and it becomes a very, very ugly scene. And eventually, after 30 days of going through all of this, the hope from the Torah is this guy's going to wake up to what he's done. He'll finally calm down, cool off, and realize what he's done and the situation he's getting involved with, and he'll get out of it. He'll drop completely out of the situation and leave it behind. And the Torah points out, Rashi explains, the Gemara, if he doesn't do that, if he still continues, then basically she becomes an isha, snua, right? He'll learn to hate her. Like it's talking about the two wives, one is a ahuva, one is snua. So the snua is supposed to be the one they have to start. They married in the end, no matter how beautiful she was, because she will always be a reminder of how low he can go. Anytime you take anything illicit, Anytime you do anything that goes against the image that you have of yourself, and hopefully it's a high-def image that you have of yourself, then the moment that you can't really enjoy that thing fully because it's always going to be in your face. It's always going to be a reminder of how you drop down to a specific low level. And usually what happens is when people remind us of the things we did that we shouldn't have done, we hate them instead. They become the source of the hatred. Really, it's our own hatred towards ourselves, but they become the object of the hatred because they become the memory of the thing that was done badly, right? And not only that, says the Torah, but it's going to result in a rebellious child, Ben Sor Mora, because whether technically speaking there can be a Ben Sor Mora or not, doesn't make a difference. You don't have to be such a rebellious child to drive your parents nuts. You don't have to become a Ben Sor Mora to get your parents sewers. You can stop a lot short of that level, basically. But now the number one key issue, as a side point, which happens to be this week's parsha speaks about the whole concept of marriage itself. This is the parsha of Kedusha, the parsha of Ki-Tetze Isha that we learn about the halachas of marriage from. That the number one factor to raising children to be normal, to be healthy, to be happy, as much as possible. As much as possible. There's obviously going to be things and distractions that we can't always overcome. There's factors we can't always deal with. But one thing is for sure, it's not money. Money certainly helps because it can lessen the stress. But money is not the basis of a healthy, happy family. Thank you. But primarily, it's going to be shalom bayis. Shalom bayis is the main thing. Families can be poor. They can be in poverty, and it happens many times. In fact, what Moshe Feinstein itself points out, as an aside, back in the 70s, this is before we got anywhere close to as gashmi as we are today, back in the 70s, he was saying it was no coincidence that most of the Gedolim over the last few decades before that had come from Europe. He says because in Europe basically they didn't have much. In America, even an ani in his time had meat. There was people had meat. There was actually not all the time, but not the best of meats, but it was much better than what was available in Europe. But to have meat usually meant going to the butcher and hanging around to see whatever bones he was throwing out to put in the soup so you had some kind of taste of meat. But that was the extent of it. And the poverty itself resulted in very well-developed Gedolei Dor eventually. So it's not every family can live with poverty and function on such a level, but he was making the point that Gashmis can be very distraction. Meaning what? Meaning that the fact that a family is well off is not going to be a guarantee that the children will grow up normal. That's all the point that's being made here right at this point in time. So what's the most important nekuda? It's going to be shalom bayis. Shalom bayis is what saves the children. That's what children grow up, they thrive on that specific point. So if in spite of the financial situation, in spite of the political situation, in spite of the what's going on in terms of security, if somehow the parents maintain an island of shalom bayis, children can survive almost everything and grow up pretty much normal along the way. So certainly if she's snuah, if he does not like her, there's not going to be shalom bayis. More than likely, any children that come from him and her, by definition, are not going to grow up and be what they're supposed to become. And so it's a whole process over here. So this really is the battle of every individual all year round, all through their life, and what we answer for on Rosh Hashanah, on the Yemei Narayim, right? Everybody has their own Yafas Torah, for sure, right? Today it's very easy between all the technology that's available to us, the cars and the houses, the amount of affluence that's been available to us in America and here, mostly outside of Eretz Yisrael, but still here now as well, that people have their attachments to things that they're drawn to, and that logic can't necessarily dictate how to behave, can't overcome the type and the desires. People are sacrificing all kinds of valuable and worthy things for the sake of fulfilling tithes today. So the Torah gives you a solution. The Torah doesn't say, don't just go, don't do it all together. If you're a big enough person and you're still clear enough and you have enough self-control to be able not to do the thing, obviously that's l'chachila, right? This guy should say to himself, this is a very attractive Gentile woman over here, but I'm a Jew. This is not the way Jews behave. We have Kedushin, Nesuyin, Shaduchim, Shadchanim, okay, the Shadchanim, but Shaduchim basically, we have all kinds of, holy ways of bringing about what's supposed to be an eternal union. The Jewish people are supposed to be on a very high level, right? We go through this whole process, not like the rest of the world. We have all these important holy concepts. So certainly, and the Torah just finished telling us about not intermarrying, and you're not even supposed to walk by a Gentile building or something like that and say how beautiful that building is, certainly even a church like that. Because, why? I mean, you can appreciate the architecture, obviously. But it means, it's talking mostly about Avodah Zarah anyhow, the halachas of Avodah Zarah, going to churches, things like that, and even though they might be works of art, architecture, it's not really what we're supposed to be enamored by, because we're always worried and wary of making a connection. It's brought down that the essence of the chet, of the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, the essence of the chet was not the eating itself. Because Baruch Hu said, do not eat from the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, but clearly Adam HaRishon, on the level on which he was living, could not have made that mistake. All the rationalizations, all the justifications, whatever he could have thought of to go ahead and make this mistake and break, it was a very simple command. Do not eat. As simple as it's recorded in the Torah, it wasn't because Baruch Hu said, I'm thinking about something, I have in mind some kind of a vera you shouldn't do, right? What do you think it's going to be? But I'm not going to tell you, you work it out. It wasn't like the Bechlal. Because Baruch Hu said very simple Hebrew, not English, right? But Hebrew, do not eat from this tree. On the day that you do, you shall surely die. Which part didn't you understand? Right? Which part wasn't clear to you in this whole thing over here? It's 100% barur, right? So there's no way, and we're talking about an individual that the Malachim confused for Hashem. That he had to tell the Malachim, no, there's God and then there's me. I'm much lower down the totem pole over here. The animals, everybody respected him. Kabbalistically, he was huge. If he was in the room today, you would not be able to see him. That's how ruchani he was. And even better yet, he had no Yitzhahara. We, on the other hand, can make mistakes and rationalize and justify and go off the derech chas v'chalila because we have Yitzhahara. We can fool ourselves. We can be fooled. We can be tempted. He could not. He could not be tempted. He could not be fooled. He could not break the commandment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he certainly was smart enough to understand the language, what it meant. And the trees were all labeled. So there was no mixing up the trees either, for that matter. Right? Red for the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra, green, blue for the Basar V'Chalav. It was clear. But he still made the mistake. Amazing, eh? The question is how. How do you get the point? So the Christians, they have a big problem with that. So what they do basically is they re-inject him with Yitzhahara. They draw him like a little kid, who can't control himself, whose mother says to him, don't take any cookies from the cookie jar without permission. And the mother goes out shopping, someplace else in the house, whatever, and the child's like, oh, this is my chance, I shouldn't, but I can't. That's the way they paint the picture. Adam was like a child who could not withstand temptation. But that's not Messiah. That's not the belief. We know differently. So we're stuck. So what do we do instead? We skip over. We just skip over the whole thing. Forget about it. One day in the future we'll understand it. It's hashgacha pratis, Kosh Baruch Hu won, he planned, whatever. But it happened. You can't argue with reality that it took place, right? But how it took place, it's a big mystery. So it really isn't, because it's just certain pieces of information that are missing from the puzzle, and once you plug them in, it actually makes sense. But it takes a little background information. So it turns out that there wasn't a progression. On the level that Adam existed before the Chet, he could not have broken the command of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He understood perfectly well what he should do and what he shouldn't do in the end. So then what changed? It says that Adam HaRishon, he understood perfectly the purpose of Ma'aseh Bereishis. Ma'aseh Bereishis was basically perfect. It was almost completely rectified, except for one area of Ma'aseh Bereishis, which was for him to correct. And he was correct about that. The only thing was that he didn't quite have the tools to do it at that point in time. So therefore, he was supposed to wait until Shabbos, and the Kiddush of Shabbos would have basically transformed the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra into Eitz HaChaim, and that would have rectified everything automatically. So his basic test was just to sit on his hands for 3 hours. But the 3 hours were long hours, not like hours today, but just not to do it. So what happened, basically? So, he made a government study of the Eitz Hadas Tov V'Ra. He wanted to understand what this thing was about. What's wrong with this tree? What is evil? Today, evil, we have all kinds of examples. We've done, Averas. We're old hat at this type of a thing. We know that this thing exists. We recognize it to a large degree. We get fooled by it. We get duped by it. But we know what it is. For Adam HaRishon, who was made into a perfect world and himself was perfect and free of all evil, and even at this point in time, you have to understand, there was no Nachash in the Garden of Eden. The Nachash was outside the garden at this point when Adam was first created, and he was a nice guy. If you had met the Nachash at this point in time, you would have had a cup of coffee with him and schmoozed. Because he was a friendly guy, and he was there. The Gemara says he was created to serve Adam. The Nachash was there. The reason why he could talk was not to trick Adam and Chava into eating from the Yitzhak to Devarim, but it was basically because he was there to serve Adam and Chava. And who knows how many other animals also could talk for that matter. Right? But that was his mission, that was his job. So what happened? So basically, when Adam went to examine the tree, he went to look at the tree to understand what the evil was that was incarnate in this particular tree, just to understand it. That's all. He looked at it. He looked at the tree itself, and by looking at the tree, as the lesson explains, that the seichel, the maskil, and the muskil are all one.
What's that mean?
Which basically translates as the mind, right? Yeah. The thinker, the person doing the thinking with the mind itself, and that which is being thought about, they all become one. What happens? Because basically I'm walking down the street, and I'm not looking at anything in particular, I'm just in my own mind, and as I walk by everything, and I don't even notice half the things that I walk by, if anything at all, whatsoever. You can walk a mile, you can walk an entire distance, it's amazing. There's times I walk from the bus station to the old city, totally oblivious to what's going on around me. I mean, I'm looking, I see, but I'm not really paying attention. I'm in my own mind. I'm not really trying to understand something, but something will catch my attention. My background is architecture, usually it's a building, some sort, something is going up, when the light rail was being built. It was very, very, distracting for me because all the different things they were doing and how they're doing it. So, and all of a sudden you make a point and you find yourself stopping and you look, and you examine. And as you do that, you build a connection. You build a relationship. Eyes are very powerful as relationship builders. A person can walk in the room 50 feet away and you can hear their voice as you're talking to somebody else, but it won't even register that you know the person. But if you could be standing 50 feet away, even, it depends how good your eyes are. But 50 feet away, and a person walks in, and you lock eyes with that person, from 50 feet away, it's like everything disappears but that other person. They're like windows to the soul, as they're called, windows to the inside. But more importantly, certainly at that stage of history, when Adam HaRishon, when he was in the Garden of Eden, and he looked at the tree, he built a connection, a relationship. Now, there's this thing called chitzonim, or the klipot, or the koiches, the force of spiritual impurity. And they were embodied in that tree. They were there. And it's always a tug of war. Our job is to use our Kedusha to vanquish the Klipot. Our job, we're here in this world to bring Kedusha to every aspect of Ma'aseh Bereshis as much as possible. As long as we're strong enough, that's what we're supposed to do. So we buy food, and we make bruchas, and we elevate it. We make Shabbos, and we elevate the entire world, right? We dress more tzniusly, we take clothing, and we give it, a sense of royalty. Whatever. Our job is to make Makadosh the Olam until everything becomes, as it said in the Kohen Gadol, Kodesh L'Hashem. That's what's going to happen. That's the end result of Ma'aseh Bereshis. That's the mission of the Jewish people. The only trouble is there's a tug of war going on because their mission is just the opposite as far as they're concerned. Their mission is to draw me down, to drag me down, to zap me of my Kedusha, and to bring me to the lowest levels, at the same time strengthen themselves, because we're all using the same Ritzot Kedusha, we're all drawing from the same gas station. I use holy sparks to hopefully do holy things, and they use holy sparks to do unholy things. It's all the same thing. It's all one, it's not the same, same result, but it's the same sparks at the end. So there's a tug of war going, and you can feel it sometimes. Like, it could be in an airport, some kind of public place. When you first walk in, get out the bus, you feel, I am a Torah Jew. I believe in God. I believe in Torah. I want to go to the world to come. You don't exactly say that when you get off the bus, but that's kind of like manifest. That's your mission statement. That's your creed to a large degree. And you walk off the bus, and you walk into the streets, and you're exposed to things. You're exposed to a world that does not bind your philosophy necessarily. People try to incubate themselves and entrench themselves to avoid things like that. But if you go beyond your borders, anywhere else in the world, you're going to be exposed to things that are not along the lines of what the Torah dictates to what you look like. So, there are people who can withstand the temptation. They don't look, they don't get involved, they don't buy, they don't, and other people who fall. But it's a tug of war. You can feel it. to maintain yourself versus being dragged in. So for Adam, it was a much more real war because it was like out in the open. Ours is kind of like behind the scenes. Ours is kind of like, happening on a level that we can't perceive necessarily, but he could see it. And since Adam HaRishon's greatness was not earned through his Maisim Tovim, he had not yet done anything specifically, important like Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov had done, and Moshe and David and Melech. They went out and became who they were. So when you achieve your own greatness, it's yours. When you do a great thing, it becomes who you are. But Adam was made great. He never achieved his greatness on his own. So even though he had the best of Kavanah, he went out there specifically to tame and to conquer and to vanquish the Eitzadas Tov Hara and to rectify my Bereshis. And therefore he looked at the tree because that's the first level of understanding something. You could touch, you could feel, something sin is looking. Riyah is like it's a whole different Metzias. A very, very high and holy level of comprehension. And he looked at the tree. At that point in time, a war began. He was trying to mekadesh the tree, but the chitzonim, the klipos, the koiches, the spiritual impurity, they wanted to draw from his kedusha. And guess who won? It's obvious, right? Who won? It was the klipot won. The koiches, spiritual impurity. But it all came because of his look. And because they won, not only did they vanquish Adam HaRishon, but they caused a complete transformation of Ma'aseh Bereshis. No longer is Ma'aseh Bereshis able to maintain itself, because where man goes, the world goes. If man is corrupt, the animals become corrupt, the earth becomes corrupt. When the Mabul came, it had to dig 3 tefachim into the ground. It drowned the humans, it drowned the animals, and it washed away the soil too. Because wherever man, the whole world is mushpa from where man's holding, the madrega that man's holding at that point in time. So, when Adam made this mistake, and he was mistakel at the tree, and he looked at the tree and was drawn in, he was transformed. Chazal describe it as going from skin that was made from light to skin that we have right now. This is the clothing he got as a result of his chet. He had clothing before the chet too, but his clothing was made from light. Now he got what's called mishra dechivya, clothing of the skin, right? The skin of the snake, right? And now he had to make this to cover this up as well. This is the clothing he made, because this is the clothing that he got, because of the chet. And once he was transformed, so now, Yitzhahara, it says that the moment he was mistakel of the tree, this is the sequence of events. He's mistakel, he looks at the tree, he builds an intellectual relationship with this tree. As a result of that, the chitzonim literally cut at him, and become part of him. At that moment in time, the Leshem explains, the Sitra Achra, the Satan, right, comes down from Shemayim and goes into the snake. And from that point onward, the snake loses his identity. He's no longer the snake. He's simply this. He's a wolf from sheep's clothing, so to speak. But he's a Sitra Achra in snake clothing. That's what he is at this point in time. And whatever the snake says from that point on is no longer the snake, it's now the Sitra Achra speaking through the mouth of the snake. Why the snake? Kabbalistically, the snake is in the shape of a nun sofit. So there's different letters that symbolize chesed, and some symbolize gvura. Nun is like one of the strongest, the letters of gvura. So therefore, the snake in the shape of a nun was the most fitting container for the Sitra Achra to go into. And he's mafata chava after that. And that's the reason why the Torah blames the chet of the Eitzadas Tov Hara on Adam, and not on Chava. She ate. She ate first. She spoke to the Nachash. She took it back to her husband to eat. One medrash says, this is not one that women usually prefer, but the husband's got a great picture of this one. But he didn't want to eat it first. He wasn't transformed the same way that she was. When she realized he would have to remarry because she's going to die now, she made such a fuss about the whole thing that he had to eat just to calm her down. There was actually a medrash like that. What does it actually mean? I don't think it means exactly what it sounds. But the reality is that he is responsible, because anyhow the Torah says, right, that what's the Lashon? Which is called Ezer Kenegdo. And the Torah says, Zacher Ezer, Lo Zacher Kenegdo, right? which means basically that she made a mistake because he didn't do his job as a Rebbe, as a husband, to keep her informed what was going on, so she could survive the onslaught of the snake. But before that, he created the environment. Because before the staklos, before the actual looking, the world was not transformed, the snake was still chutz hagan. The moment he looked, before he ate, he was mistakel, he looked at the tree, that caused the transformation of Maisa Bereshis. Everything had a yerida to a much lower level, and that's when the snake came in and began to speak to Chava. And that's why Adam is held responsible. And the most remarkable thing is, and that's when eating becomes inevitable. Because at this point in time, now there's a Yitzhahar inside Adam Arishon, and now there's a snake to seduce them into eating, and now there's intellectual confusion. No longer the level of true and false at this point, but the level of good and evil, which can become subjective, and now it's possible. The eating was just the last part of the chet. It was just the result of what took place at the beginning. But the entire chet began with histakhlus, with the looking, all to do with the eyes. So that's why you find is all these the Gra himself brings down in Safet Snusa. There are actually three britot that Kosh Baruch Hu made with Klal Yisrael. The most famous, of course, is Bris Ma'or. That's the one that we did Bris Milah, an 8-day-old child. There's also Bris Kusla Vesvasaim, or Bris Halashon, basically that we should use our mouth in a proper way, in a holy way. We shouldn't speak Lashon Hara, Moshe Shema, things like that, or even in a wanton way. And there's a bris called Bris Kusla Nayim, a bris made with the eyes. Because basically, that's the whole rectification. That's why the Sanhedrin were also referred to as eyes. And David HaMelech, what was one of the biggest tests he had was to do with his eyes, where he happened to be in the roof of his house, and he happened to see and gaze and see Bathsheba, and that was a simon that it was time to take her, the whole confusion that resulted from that. But historically, it goes all the way back. Now, this has major ramifications as well all through history. As the Leshem explains, that because Adam did this, his eyes were damaged. Or at least his vision, not like his physical eyes, he still had 20/20 vision. Right? He didn't need glasses right away at that moment in time. But his ability to see the emes, to see truth, to what it has to be, that was greatly damaged. So because of that, but Chava was not the same way. Because when she finally looked at the tree, the world had been transformed already. So her staklus was more as a result of his staklus. His was the one that did the essential damage. Because of that, the Leshem explains that's the reason why by the Egel Zahav, it's the men who jump in, feet first, and provide all the gold and silver, whatever, to make the Egel Zahav. The women want no part of it at that point in time. And furthermore, it's the men.
That would be Yisera.
Yeah, well, that's maybe because of the fact they weren't damaged in the process, but it was mostly with the fact that they didn't have the staklus wasn't damaged. They're looking at the world. Their vision of reality wasn't affected the same way. And he says that's the reason also why the Meraglim were the men and not the women. Because the women, they could see the emes, they could see past the reality. The men's vision itself was damaged. And historically, and obviously, Lo Sasuach Levach Achrinechem, for the most part, probably applies more to men than it does to women. Right? So, this is basically, the basis of the beginning of this week's parsha. Right? The whole thing, how does this whole thing happen? It's not because simply, he's not in the dark, it's because he sees something. His eyes are what pull him in. As the Gemara points out, the eyes are the spies of the heart. When a person sees something, out of sight, out of mind for the most part, a person can desire something, but until he actually sees it, he's not really pulled in. He doesn't really, get drawn after as much as if he only thinks about it intellectually in his mind. So the Yafas Torah represents basically the struggle of mankind to deal with vision, to deal with how we perceive reality, and how we can distort reality. And how much Yitzhahar takes advantage of the fact that we do start reality and our vision is weak. So there's different levels of vision, obviously, right? And ultimately speaking, the one that we're judged for the most is not so much the physical eyes, but really the mental vision itself. Because as much as the eyes, if you just you analyze the situation and you look at what's really going on over here, it's not the eyes. What's the histaklus? What is the actual looking itself? What's the source of the looking? The actual physical eyes? They're windows. We look at each other as if our personality is right there in the eyeballs, right? We look at the world, Ki'ilu, it's the eyes that are seeing, like somehow there's a little computer program and a machinery behind the iris over here that goes in, it's all processed right here, but it's not what's going on. The reality is that light comes in, it's just light beams coming in, they're inverted upside down the back of the eye, which explains a lot, and then eventually it goes to the brain, and the brain plays a movie. The eyes are simply windows to the world, but the actual vision, the actual perception, seeing of reality takes place inside the mind. It's the mind that does the staklus, that does the viewing. The eyes, that's why, for example, halachically, if a person is saying Shema, and he happens to be like his eyes are going across, and he sees something that's not sanua, but he keeps on moving and never actually focuses on that specific thing, he does not have to repeat the words that he said, even though his eyes are that one moment. If he happens to look and he focuses and he sees what he's looking and he stays there for a second and he gazes per se, so now he must repeat the part of the Devarim Kedusha, the Shema itself that he said that was said while looking at the wrong thing, or learning for that matter, right? It should be done the same way. So it's the actual focus, it's the paying attention, it's the mind analysis of what the eyes are basically bringing in. And the most amazing thing about life is the way that 50 people can look at the exact same thing and see a different world. And that proves the point. It's not that your eyes are better than my eyes, or my eyes are better than your eyes, or your glasses are stronger than mine. We're all looking at the world with the same vehicles, the same technical mechanisms. The difference between you and me and the next person is the movie screen at the back of the head, right, where it's being projected, and the interpretation of those events. So Rishu ben Levi, his son has a near-death experience. He almost dies. Well, he did die. That's the whole point. A near-death experience means he died, but he was revived. He came back for whatever reason. A miracle happened, and he came back. So the first thing his son asked him his father asked him was, now that you've got him come back, because most of us can't do things like that, there's very little written, there's no literature about the world to come and about all those fantastic things. Ayin Larasa Elokim, and only Kosh Baruch Hu has seen it, he knows about it. It's beyond our vision, our comprehension. But here's a person who went and came back. Why not ask him what he saw? So he says a remarkable thing. He says, you won't believe this. I went and I saw an upside-down world. That's a chiddush. You went and you saw an upside-down world. If you want to tell me you saw a world that's different than ours, it's one thing, but an upside-down world. You went to Olam Emes. You went to the world beyond this world where truth is eternal and lasting and supernal and all the sublime, and you're calling it upside. Why do you call it upside down? Well, because in this world, whatever we value is down over there, and whatever was down over here is valued over there. So in this world, Torah is not important to the world, and Tamei Chachamim are the source of a lot of bizarre in this world, basically. And then over there, Kosh Baruch Hu is machshiv all of this. And then, but in this world, it's upside down. So his father comes back and says, my son, you did not see an upside down world. You saw the world right side up. This is the world that's upside down. What? A Tana whose son is probably a future Tana, who's been learning Torah since who knows how long, under the Gedolim, and living in a world that was much clearer than the one we're living today. Today, Americans versus Jews is it's very hard to see the differences, but in those days, Romans and gladiators versus Jewish philosophy, two different worlds, and you have to point out that the world you saw was the right side up one. How could you make a mistake like that? How could you make a statement like that? Come back and say, but you won't believe it. I finally saw the world the way it's supposed to be. Everything is the way it's supposed to be. The important people are important there, and the unimportant people are unimportant, but over here it's all backwards. No, he comes back and says, it was an upside-down world. That is the impact. That is how much this world is mashpia on individuals. To the point you can be from, living by Torah, doing the mitzvahs, everything right, and still be walking on the ceiling. And because everybody else is walking the ceiling with you, you think it's the ground. And you live that way. Somehow the hair doesn't fall, to the ground and, things don't fall to the ceiling. But that's, intellectually, that's the way people live their lives. So that explains another Gemara. And the other Gemara says the following thing. The famous Gemara that everybody's heard before. But in this light, it's a little more interesting. The Gemara says, at the end of history, at the end of days, Because Baruch Hu is going to take the Yetzer Hara, he's going to shecht it. How does he shecht it? He's mali the olam with dust. He actually take it out there with a shechita knife and shecht it right there in the spot and salt the meat. He's shecht it over here. Okay, it's finished. It's over. History's come to a conclusion. It's no longer around. He's going to shech the Yetzer Hara. And then, okay, good, that's enough. Finished. Right? Bury him, put him away. Who cares? What's the next step he does? That's not good enough. Because Baruch Hu says, okay, now that I've done that, he brings the Yetzer Hara before the Tzaddikim, Gemurim, and the Rishayim Gemurim. And what do they say? The Tzaddikim say, whoa, they both cry first of all. Everyone's crying. It's a big crying scene over here, right? And why are the Tzaddikim crying? Because they're going, look, it's a huge, monstrous mountain. Look at the size of this Yetzer Hara. It's phenomenal. Thank God we never knew this while we were living. Because if that's the way it had looked to us back then, because in our lifetimes, we thought it was nothing. Or we worked hard to overcome it, right? But now we see what it actually looks like. Incredible. We would have failed. And done more Averos, God forbid. So what does the Kosh Baruch Hu do? He brings it to the Tzaddikim and the Rishon Gemurim now. And they're also crying. But they're crying because they're going, unbelievable. That's how small it is. Where's my magnifying glass? And they got, that's what made me do that affair. God, I can't believe it. In my lifetime, it was this huge towering mountain, and that's why I did all this Averos knife, and it's only a little hair. Okay, fine. What does the Gemara mean by this? First of all, a more basic question. How can it be both at the same time? The male, it's a towering mountain. So then the Tzaddikim get rewarded because they overcame it. And the Rishayim, okay, they didn't do the same thing. But how can it be both a towering mountain and a thin little hair in the end? What's the Gemara telling you? The Gemara is telling you a sod about the Yetzer Hara. First of all, the Gemara says in Kedushin elsewhere, the Yetzer Hara is so powerful today, ever since the Yetzer Hara is so powerful today, that nobody can overcome. Doesn't help you, you're finished. You'll not win the battle. What is it? What kind of help? How does it happen? So Gemara is telling you, the Yetzer Hara is what you make it. It's personal to you. It's what you make it. Two people come. One guy sees this beautiful woman, right, and he can't control himself. He has to marry her. Has to take her, right? He's totally attracted, and his buddy goes, "What are you crazy? Are you nuts? She's a Gentile. Can't don't give us a halacha, but a think of the embarrassment. Think of the community. Think of your parents. Think of all the sorry that caused yourself and your brothers, your sisters. Think of the laughing stock of the community. I can't help myself. I can't. What are you talking about?" And the guy walks away. 15 guys walk away. 100 guys. This guy's one guy is such a incredible Yetzer Hara. He can't control himself. Because that's not where you fight the battle, as the Torah is telling you. That's not where you fight the battle. The Gemara says, "Ein Adam choyte, a person does not do an avera unless a spirit of insanity enters him." It's a powerful statement. You know why? Because if that's true, who needs Yom Kippur? Who needs Yom Kippur? Every avera I do is insanity. I plead insanity, right? I did this thing, it was insane. I'm off the hook. If I was sane, I wouldn't do a thing like that. I was quite aware of the fact that I was doing this thing, but the Torah tells me, because who in the right mind would do a chet? So therefore I should be pater. Or is the Gemara just joking, being facetious over here, or is it being true, right? So the answer is in Achinami, you're right. The Avera was not the actual mice itself. Because you know something? It's like a person being on a diet who wants to not eat a lot of fattening food and goes to a wedding on an empty stomach. It's not going to happen, right? A person wants not to speak Lashon Hara, but hangs with people who speak Lashon Hara. It's not going to happen, right? A person wants to get up on time and daven with a minyan because he gets up too late at the time and misses a minyan and goes to bed at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not going to happen. It's not the way it's going to work. Between the last year that I made the mistake and the next do. So what am I chayav for? Myself to look at the world in a mature way. So when the situation arose, I was tested, I could say, Pashmash, this is good. This is not worth it. It's exciting. On the spot, it's thrilling. It's talking to my body. I feel, but, you know something? I can see the future. I'll regret this later on. I'll hate it. I'll hate myself, hate this thing, and the results, Tetze, will be disastrous. I can see down the road that's the way it's going to work. The Avera is not preparing for the Avera. Because if you're not prepared, you're not going to win. He knows everything. He knows all the ins and the outs. He knows